I have a quick question for you. Are you a people pleaser? Do you have a hard time saying no? It's no, I can't. I got to please everybody. Or are you someone that's very reactive and your liver young rises really quickly and you're in somebody's face right away, even though you know what they did wasn't really something that we should lose our cool with? So today, my guest is Kristi McLeod, and I love that she's coming to share with us everything that has to do with our mental health being from imprinted from us from like way back when we were young kids or teenagers, what happened to us that kind of sits with us and is imprinted in us, in ourselves for many years. And sometimes we don't know why we react, why we are people pleasers. Raise your hand if that's you. I've done it. I'm much better, but I was pleasing everybody for a long time. Christy is going to come and talk about how we can look at our patients that have a lot of emotional stress or trauma or imprint that's been sitting there within the cells, within the body, and is showing as physical symptoms, not necessarily emotional symptoms, but as physical symptoms like IBS, like having digestive system issues or palpitation or other symptoms, fatigue maybe, right? All those symptoms are the physical, but they are coming from the imprint of our emotional being. So we're going to talk about the central nervous system. We're going to talk about somatic health. And if you don't know what that is, well, you're in for a treat because you're going to learn all about it. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to the show, Kristi McLeod. I love that name. We were just talking before we started how I love that name. It's very Scottish, very strong. So it gives you power just to, before you even meet Kristi, her last name to me gives you strength and power. So today, though, we're going to talk about a different subjects that we haven't done on the AcuPro show, which is somatic healing. And I invited Kristi because that's her jam. And how is that going to fit within our practice as acupuncturists? Well, we're going to talk about that. But before we start, thank you so much for coming to the AcuPro show, Kristi. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I would love to hear your journey a little bit. Kristi is Canadian. You're in Alberta,
Yeah.
right? Yes. And she's not an acupuncturist, but we're going to see the connection and how what she does can truly help us as practitioners. So this is why she's on the show. So I would love for you to tell me, how did you fall
Mhm.
into somatic healing? And for people that don't know what somatic healing means, then you can explain as well, what does that mean? Body talk kind of thing.
I'll start off with how I came into this. So, I had noticed over my own healing journey, I was doing a lot of talk therapy. Now, of course, talk therapy, everything has its place. And what I found in my experience of it was I was just telling the same stories over and over. And it was helping in ways, but not really in ways that were moving me forward significantly. And so I started to realize there's got to be a different way because I was just given medication after medication that, in full honesty, were not really helping. I realized there must be another way to actually work with the symptoms that I'm feeling and not just put a band-aid over it. And so this is when I started to fall into energy healing was first, and I learned those modalities and started practicing those modalities as well myself. At the time when I started all this, I was actually a teacher. So I came out of teaching and then I moved into building this business. But I started with energy healing and I noticed the same sort of thing. So I was a Reiki master, I was providing Reiki sessions, and I was noticing the similar thing to what I was experiencing when I was doing all the talk therapy and everything else is that, yes, clients are finding relief, but then they're coming back a few weeks later with the same concerns and the same things and the same emotions coming up. And I thought, well, gosh, how can we get to the actual root? Like, how can we go deeper? And yes, again, Reiki is a wonderful tool that I still use every now and again, but how can we get deeper so that we are actually resolving it from the root? Now, this is where I'll give a quick explanation of somatics. And this is, we're coming into the body, essentially. And so one of my mentors, shared it with me in a way that somatics is the awareness of what's happening in the body. Okay. And by that, the awareness of, okay, my heart rate is increasing. Oh, I'm getting sweaty. Oh, I'm noticing I'm feeling maybe a little flushed, or these types of things. Awareness of what's happening in the body. And then embodiment is where we actually sit with what is happening in the body. So now, coming back to my own journey, I was following along with Sit With It. At that time, they were called Empowered Healers Academy, but I was following in the background. I was just like watching, seeing what they were doing, and I was like, huh, they say they get to the root. This is what I want to do with people. I watched their on-demand pre-recorded masterclass, and I had not even experienced a session, and I was like, okay, I'm in. Here we go. And I just knew that it was time because, like I had said, I was ready to go deeper with myself and with clients and actually get to the root of what's happening with them. And so that then that is long-term sustainable relief and resolution ultimately. So that's how I fell into Sit. And now here we are 5 years later. I am the lead facilitator in the certification program.
That's really cool. So we'll have the link below of the whole program so people can check it out as well, because I think some practitioners might be really interested, because I've started practicing in 2003, so it's been a long time. And even though you have people coming for fertility issue or pain or chronic pain or anything, you could see that there's also a lot of mental health that's accompanied with this, and trauma and anxiety and depression. And I know that's what you were dealing with at the time when you were looking for some help, was anxiety and depression. You get the medication, you get the talk therapy, but you're not going into what does it feel like in your body. So that's that shift that you made. You shared on your website when I was reading that the nervous system is dysregulated, and it shows us as depression or anxiety, and like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to deal with this. So then in general, if a practitioner sees a patient for the first time and their tongue doesn't look too bad and their pulse doesn't look too bad, and they answer the question about any issue, and they came because their immune system is having some allergies and in the spring, and so they're like, oh yeah, I sleep well, my digestion is great, blah blah blah, all this. What are the subtle little sign that you could look into a patient that's sitting across from you but technically is not aware, so it's hard for them to express or share with us what is going on within the body that may create some anxiety or any mental health issue that really comes from the body itself?
I love this question. So, once one starts learning about all of the cues of the body, you might notice subtle things like, for example, one of my clients that came to work with me, we worked together for about 6 months. And when the first couple of months she would come in, her leg was just bouncing, 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 bouncing the whole session. Every session. Yeah. And what I will say though is that this can be a very natural discharge for the body as well, but it's also a cue to me that the body is needing that discharge, right? And I noticed that. So I noticed things like that. I noticed just how they're holding their body. They might be tightened up. They might have their legs crossed tightly over, and just little cues like this. Also eye contact. Are they comfortable making eye contact, or are they looking over to the side the whole time? So that's a really big one. I always ask as well about, okay, so when you're talking about these allergies, what do you notice in your body? And it might be I don't know, like it's uncomfortable, I'm sneezing and that type of thing. Or it might be like, oh, I feel this tingling in my stomach and this sensation in my lungs, this gurgling. There's a depth to where I can tell if they're actually feeling what's happening in the body as well. And when we're looking at the nervous system, I see the world personally through a polyvagal theory lens. And so that's what I'm familiar with when I am working with the nervous system, is I speak in those terms. But again, it's a lot of those connection pieces, right? So are they making eye contact? How does their voice sound as well? That can be a real big cue to where their nervous system is at. So all of these things, of course, have taken me a number of years to learn about. It's very nuanced, right? But those are cues that would tell me that someone's nervous system is in a certain state.
That's great. So, yeah, the leg that's jumping. I remember being in a school with someone when I went back to school and did my TCM degree. Sometimes you switch who you sit with. You don't always sit with the same people. And I sat next to this person who we became friends, but would have that leg that just nonstop, but it would shake the desk, like because we're sharing this table together, right? So it would shake the whole thing. I'm like, what are you doing? The table. And he wasn't even aware that as he's writing, because this was before computers, we were writing still. As he was writing, he didn't even notice that the table was shaking, that he was making it because his leg was against the leg of the table. So it made the whole table shake. And
Oh,
I was like, what are you doing? He's, oh, sorry, my leg. It's something, it's a nervous tick. That's what a lot of people will say, right? It's a nervous tick. It's like something that you do in order to self-regulate. And then there's lots of clues like this that you're right, that we see in patients, and you want to almost ground them by just putting your hand and just calming them, just ground them. Okay, let's ground you, because obviously your body is trying to regulate itself. So for practitioners, if I flip it, and not for the patient, but for practitioners, sometimes the practitioner's nervous system is dysregulated, right? For many reasons. Could be due to trauma, could be due to dealing with anxiety, they're having a lot of financial issue, they're having some problem at home, whatever it is. And they have to go into the treatment room and be calm and be present and be treating patients, but their system might not be feeling up to a really calmness. How can a practitioner help themselves in order to walk into this room and feel grounded instead of feeling really dysregulated or out of whack, or feel like their body is just not feeling good?
this is such a wonderful question. And this is exactly why I work with a lot of practitioners and facilitators and coaches, is because, in my opinion, it is my sacred responsibility to make sure that I am arriving in my treatment room or here online when I'm working with clients in a place that I can be grounded and that I can hold the space and that I can, whatever comes up, like I am unshakable, right? Now, the reality is the world that we live in is there's a lot happening. There's a lot of stressors. My recommendation is, first of all, really dropping into the body and familiarizing with, okay, what are those cues? Because to me, the goal for myself and for any of the practitioners that I'm working with is life can be lifing. It can be doing its thing, whatever is happening, but my system is still in a place with such capacity that I can still show up no matter what, and even when, and even through. And if I can't, then I have the responsibility and accountability to say, you know what, I have to reschedule this appointment, which is not something we obviously want to be doing very often, but it comes down to that responsibility. Now, coming back to what can we do in those moments, right? There are a number of regulation tools that one can use. It depends on where you're at within where your autonomic nervous system is at. So it might be in more of the sympathetic, the fight or flight, which in that case, we'd want to discharge some of the energy, which for me, movement is the thing that I recommend. This might look like doing some gentle bouncing, just standing up, easy, soft knees and bouncing up and down. I'm not talking like calf raises, but just lifting the heel up about an inch off the ground and bouncing up and down. That's something that feels really good to my system. Jumping jacks is something that can feel really good just to allow some of that energy to move. And then if you're on the other side of it, where you might be in more of that dorsal, like shut down, freeze type of place, then what we want to do is increase the energy. Now, what we can also do is bouncing here, but I do recommend that it's a little gentler, shall we say. We're just even like bringing some energy to the body by tapping along the arms, along the abdomen, along the legs, bringing some energy into the body in that way. Another piece, and this is where things get sticky, is because our nervous system is always communicating, right? It's always communicating to us. When we know the cues that it's giving us, we can work with it always. And sometimes the regulation tools that I share with people, because we need those tools in order to build the foundation for the rewire of the nervous system. That's my goal, is we want to rewire the nervous system so that we can be in the moments where there's stressful things happening, but we're able to be like, okay, I have the capacity in my system to place this here and step into my treatment room and be fully present with my client. There are the moments, though, that the regulation tools turn into a bypassing tool, where we're not actually then sitting with the emotions that need to be felt, because that can feel uncomfortable, right? So instead, we regulate our way out of it. So that is where I really recommend knowing when you're using the regulation tools as a bypassing tool and when it is actually time to just sit with the emotions that need to be felt. And I think also too, one thing that I do want to touch on quickly before we move on is the other piece about when my client walks into my space, whether it be in person or online, it doesn't matter, their nervous system is reading my nervous system. And so if my nervous system is all over the place, they're going to feel it, and all immediately there's not that safety and trust within the systems. Even if consciously they might not be aware of that, their nervous system is going to feel that, right? So that's why, to me, practitioners, facilitators, anyone working with other humans, it is crucial that we get into the body and understand your nervous system and the cues that your body is giving you.
Do you see a lot of patients with insomnia, depression, anxiety? I sure do. Do you have patients wanting to get off their medications? Would you like to become more proficient in treating their mental illnesses and truly help them and get results? Over the years, I have seen how amazing TCM is when it comes to mental disorders. I mean, come on, acupuncture rocks for that. I have helped countless patients get off their antidepressants and sleeping pills. This is why I created the TCM treatment for mental disorders. Those are common mental disorders addressing depression, anxiety, insomnia, ADHD, and OCD. And you can join my private Facebook group to get constant support from an amazing TCM Rockstar community as well. Listen to what people who took this course have to say. You are amazing, Clara. I love that you are doing this and can't wait to learn more from your brilliant mind. Seriously, your passion and energy inspires a lot of us to learn more about TCM. Much appreciated always. And someone else said, Clara has an incredible ability to explain and teach TCM concepts with ease and clarity. She unscrambled many TCM concepts that were previously difficult for me to understand and retain. Her vivacious and enthusiastic personality has helped me fall in love with a healing modality dear to my own culture, one that I have almost left behind due to growing up in the Western world. Thank you, Professor Cohen. When investing in this course, you can download the PDF version of the slides to have them at your fingertip. You will get 2 continuing education hours, which are approved after you pass a multiple choice quiz, and you will get a certificate. You have access to the course forever, so you can watch it over and over if you need to. It is pre-recorded. And I always offer a 7-day money-back guarantee because I stand behind my product. So don't miss out. Invest in the mental disorders course today. Go to AcuProAcademy.com and click the TCM course tab on the menu bar, or check out the link below in the show notes. You won't regret it. So agree to that, because it's so prevalent when the patient comes in. We have patients that come in very high energy, very young, right? And then we have patients that come in and very yin energy, but really to the point where they can barely take a step to sit on the chair. And then they sat on the chair like all hunched down, and they're just like, oh my God, can't believe I'm sitting down. You were talking about the voice earlier and said that also give you clues. And you have people that shout when they're talking to you, and then you have people you can barely hear, and you're like, what, excuse me, what? So there's that. And then so there's 2 things. I love that you say, okay, ground them by grounding yourself so they can meet you where you are. And it's also trying to meet them where they are and try to slowly shift them. Interesting, because it's like that mirror effect that people say, if you cross your arm, the person across you is going to cross their arm because there's a defense there. But if you're more open and your chest is open and you're inviting the person to be calm and safe, then they might also relax on the chair and then be more calm and feel safe in that space. Specifically, if it's a new patient that's never seen you before. I appreciate you sharing this. I have a question. I'm going to go TCM on you. So I'm
Mhm.
going to go Chinese medicine on you. It's going to be fun. When we look at patients and nothing is separated, fair, and you know that because you did Reiki and energy healing. So you're very familiar with all this. But when we see patients, we ask a lot of questions, and they're very physical questions at first, right? So it's, oh, do you have a bowel movement every day? Do you feel it's finished? And what does it look like? Do you have bloating? Blah, blah, blah. All this kind of thing. So we ask a lot of questions that are very physical, but they're not physical related to the emotional always, right? Because let's say someone has irritable bowel syndrome. We all know irritable bowel syndrome comes from your central nervous system being dysregulated, even though it's digestive issues. And the person might say, I have constipation and diarrhea alternating, and I have IBS. And so when we look at the symptoms, we're like, okay, but obviously stress is playing a major role. And so the stress is showing up in the cells physically. How do you explain that to patients? Like for talk therapy, they talk about the problem, right? Whatever the trauma was or the stress is, they can talk. And like you said, for you, that wasn't enough. And you needed something that was more body related. And so if you do have digestive system issue, a lot of people think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to put some needles and it's going to regulate everything. And the great part about acupuncture is it does activate the vagus nerve and it does activate the parasympathetic system. So it's great to bring you in that rest and recover. But how do you explain to patients, okay, so what you're feeling is actually related to emotion, not necessarily to just the body?
Mhm. I love this question. So, this is so interesting because many people that will come to me, they'll say, I have tried everything, everything. I've tried all the things, but it hasn't worked. And then this is where I do ask the question of, okay, have you looked at the emotional root of it? And it's kind of like, oh, yeah, a little bit. Like I've gone to therapy and this type of thing. And so I explain a little bit about what the process is of sit in this moment because I may ask a lot of questions. When I'm going through the sit process, and sit is subconscious imprinting technique. I keep saying sit, but I realized I don't think I've said that. So,
Yes. So say that again. It's subconscious imprinting
yep,
technique.
subconscious imprinting
Okay.
technique. Totally. So,
Thank you.
you bet. So when I'm going through the process, let's use your example of IBS. Stick with that one. So I'm asking questions about, okay, what are the symptoms? What are you noticing? How is this showing up for you? And then what I might do in this is I might say, okay, how is this impacting you emotionally? Because it's frustrating. Depending on where you're at, you might not be able to go out in public all too often. It can be embarrassing. It can be whatever it can be, right? And so I ask those questions. And then when I'm moving through the process of sit, we actually do a testing process. So when I'm explaining this to somebody, maybe we're not in a session, I will say, listen, I'm going to actually do an intuitive testing process to pull up the root age and a few emotions that your body is communicating to me. And we'll talk about that time in your life. It may be a time that there was a trauma. It may be suppressed emotions, memories, but we will just have a conversation about that. And even if you don't remember, I have the emotions that I pulled up. So 95% of the time, if all of the other modalities and all of the other things that you've tried aren't quite working, it's because it's emotional. And at this point, a lot of people are like, whatever, I'll try anything. Fine, I'll try it. And then we have results.
Okay. And so when you do a sit,
Mhm.
what exactly happens through that
Mm.
session? When you start, what do you do? Do you just sit there? Is the patient laying down? Like what exactly
Okay,
happens?
so we start seated. So I do sessions online, I do sessions in person and in groups. So I'm going to explain first one on one what that looks like. So we start seated, and I ask the client, what do you want to focus on today? Let's say they say sleep. I'm not sleeping at night. Okay, cool. So I'll ask a number of questions about how is this impacting you? What are you not doing because of it? How's it impacting day to day? Again, what is the emotional data here? Like, how do you feel about not sleeping? And then we shift gears to what do you want instead? What's going to be possible for you when you're sleeping through the night, you're waking up feeling rested, all of this type of thing. And these questions come through intuitively. Whatever's coming through, I'll ask it. And then at that point is when I'll shift into, okay, I'm going to just do some testing quickly. I'll let you know what comes up. So I pull up age, emotions, a few other things. And then I ask them, okay, what happened for you? What was life like when you were 7 years old? Now, this is an interesting thing. A lot of folks will tend to look for the big trauma, the big event, right? I often have to give the reminder of whatever comes through first, let's just chat about it. And so for some, it's, oh, I don't know, I was in a dance troupe and the friend of mine kicked me off the group or whatever it is, right? And so now looking back, our, however old brain sees it and it's not a big deal. But for 7-year-old you, that's a big deal, right? So we chat about that. And then, so still seated, but then we move into client lays down or leans back with head and shoulders supported, whatever is most comfortable. But it is important for the head and shoulders to be supported so that it's showing the body like, okay, we're safe to relax, go into a deeper state. And then I guide the client through a number of statements that they're repeating after me to clear that sensory and subconscious data and then reprogram the subconscious mind to what they want instead. So throughout that process as well, especially one-on-one, I'm checking in often. So it might not be only statements. I might get into some more somatic type work of really bringing them into their body. It is somatic, but also with the other nervous system education and certifications that I have, we might go deeper into the body. Okay, what are you noticing? Oh, I'm noticing this tingling throughout my leg, and we might just explore that for a bit, and then we'll get back into statements. So that's what a session looks like one-on-one.
You have people that, let's say, you give them a statement and it's a positive statement, like in emotional freedom technique, where you tap an acupuncture point at the same time. Do you have ever people coming and saying, I'm saying this, but I don't believe any of it? Is that still going to work for me?
Absolutely, yes. So the thing with SIT is I used to actually do a lot of markets and events. So we would set up a booth at a craft market and I would do mini SIT sessions. So when I would explain it to people, though, often they would say, okay, so you're going to have me repeat a whole bunch of affirmations after you. And here's the thing. The SIT statements, the beauty of them is that we were bringing the subconscious data, the unconscious stories perhaps into consciousness and then rewriting it from there. Let me rewind a moment there. This is also why we get the client's words. So when I'm asking all those questions at the beginning of what do you want instead, they might say, I just want to feel rested. And so for me, I might want to wake up in the morning and feel like I have energy to go for a workout and go do this thing and go do this thing. But for them, they just want to wake up feeling rested, right? So that's where the nuance comes in here of I'm not going to go to this big, huge, wild story of something that you feel you might not believe. I'm going to say the statements that those words came out of your mouth of like where you feel you could reach now. And I will say there are still times that we'll be going through the statements and they will say, I wish that I could actually feel that and believe it. And sometimes I say to that, sometimes we just need to continue with the statements and continue interrupting the pattern and interrupting the stories that our subconscious has been playing, right? And then we get to a point where we feel it. Now, that being said, though, if it's like you're this far a foot away from actually being able to feel it versus like it's a whole football field away, then I'm going to suggest let's bring it back a little bit to something that might feel a little bit more believable for you right now. And then we just titrate our way into their most desired state, right?
Yeah, and that makes sense that you're using their words because that's what they're looking for. So it makes it easier than you having to come up with a phrase that is not connecting with them. Yeah, I like that very much. So when you were talking about going back, it could be traumatic or not traumatic. Something came up in my brain, a memory. So in Chinese medicine, the 8 extra vessels are really what connects us to the first 7 years of our life, the second 7, the third 7. Basically, that first 21 years of our lives, and because a lot of things happen, but the first 7 is really critical. It's where a lot of our memory stays in our body. Same thing for the second 7. Something came up with me when you were talking about this, because when I feel like around 7, so I don't know if it's the first 7 years or the second 7, because I can't remember exactly how old I was. My best friend and I were biking. I'm from a very small town in the French Alps. So, at that stage, I'm a Gen X. Our parents didn't know where we were. We were gone all day and having fun, right? There was no, so we were like riding our bikes and miles around the town and up and down and having fun. And anyway, we went down this road and I stopped because I wanted to say something to her. So I stopped. She was right behind me and she didn't know that I was going to stop. And so she hit me and fell over her bike into my bike and fell down, and her front tooth flew off. And that was a real front tooth, like it wasn't a baby tooth. It was a real front tooth. And there was blood everywhere. And I was like panicking, oh my gosh. And when she's on the floor. And so this man that was just working on the field came, put both our bikes and us into the car and drove us to her mom's house. And we got there. And of course, she saw that she lost the front tooth. And her mom just lost her cool on me and yelled at me and said it was all my fault and that I ruined her daughter's life and that she'll have horrible teeth for the rest of her life, etc. Obviously, they did an implant later on and it was fine. She had a great smile, better than mine, by the way. But it stayed with me because I felt so bad that it was my fault, because she kept saying it was my fault. And I felt it was my fault. I stopped without telling her I was stopping. This whole catapult in your head as a kid. And you don't know, you don't have the tools to deal with that. And so for the longest time, I'm going to be 60, so it's different now, but for the longest time, for many years, every time something happened, I always thought, oh my God, it's going to be my fault. And I got into this anxiety because I was like, if I didn't close the door, if I didn't lock the door and someone comes in and does something to the apartment where I live with my mom and my brothers and stuff, I would think, oh my God, it's going to be my fault. It's all going to be my fault. And I started having massive anxiety to catastrophe happening because of me. And it took a long time for that to go. When you talk about in your body, it was a lot of nausea, right? It really attacked my stomach. So it would make me nauseated. And then to the point where sometimes dizziness would come up and I would have to sit down. So it's not an issue now, but it was for many years. So is that what you're talking about with somatic healing coming from an event? And that was a bigger traumatic event than a smaller one, but yeah, that stayed with me for a long time. And so in TCM perspective, we use acupuncture to try to release this trauma within the body by activating certain nerves, looking at the body, even though it's related to an emotional trauma. With the needle, we're trying to like relax the body, get into a state that's better. Tell me more about that kind of coordination, and am I on the right track?
Totally. So yes, so with the somatic side of things, we're definitely looking at how is this impacting physically. So in your case, you had mentioned nauseousness, even sometimes leading to dizziness, needing to sit down. And I'd even be curious about the other symptoms that may have been around as well, like heart rate, what was it doing to your breathing, all of these types of things, right? And so these all become cues and information of what you can do in the moment. And then when it comes to sit, there would be like, I'm not working specifically on the body, obviously no needles, I'm not an acupuncturist, but what I'm doing with sit is that I am rewriting the data from the subconscious mind. And so there's a lot of, I forgive myself for stopping right in front of my friend. I forgive myself for believing it was all my fault. It was all my fault. It was all my fault. And everything that is, and all the nauseousness and all the dizziness that this has created over the years, I destroy and uncreate all of that. And so we're repeating it in this way. And I will also say, when clients are repeating the statements, they're repeating them out loud. So the subconscious, aka also the body, is a goal-serving mechanism. So it is going to hear what you're telling it, and it's going to say, oh, it's okay to let this go now. So that's the difference. And it's so fascinating because when I walk people through the statement portion of a sit session, I've had people come finish up the statements and say, I felt like I was hypnotized, like you had hypnotized me. I was like, no, there's none of that. It's just the guiding through the breath and the coming into the body and all of that. But we really do go quite deep with it. And the results have been wild. And then, of course, afterwards, they can have those like touch ups or the moments of, ooh, I'm noticing that nauseousness. Okay, it doesn't feel quite as extreme. That's great. And now either you can continue with the needles in the physical symptoms as well. But typically, gosh, once we go through that emotional and sensory data and the memory and just bringing some acknowledgement to it that, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't my fault, or bring that acknowledgement to it, oftentimes it's resolved.
Before we continue with today's episode, I want to share something that honestly feels like a big moment for me. If you've been following me for a while, you know I've always said no to all sponsorships. I've been approached many times, but I turn them all down because if I don't genuinely use a product or love it, I will never recommend it to you. But today is different. I am super excited to introduce my very first sponsor. Drumroll, please, Jane App. I'm also a Jane ambassador, so this is a company I actually use and love. I am saying yes because I've used Jane for years in my own multidisciplinary clinic. Truly, it's the best practice management software and electronic medical record I've ever worked with. Before Jane, we were using a clunky system that made everything harder than it needed to be. When we switched, the entire clinic felt the difference immediately. Jane is built by people who actually understand what it's like to be a practitioner running a busy practice. One of my favorite features is online booking. There is nothing better than waking up and seeing patients booking their own appointment while I was asleep. Your patients can book when it works for them, and the waitlist feature fills last-minute cancellations automatically. I love that. I used to spend so much time calling 8 to 10 people just to fill up one spot. Jane also automates the things we never enjoy doing, like intake forms, reminders, confirmation. It honestly feels like having an extra assistant handling all the moving parts so you can focus on what really matters, which is supporting your patients and being the TCM rockstar practitioner you truly are. There are so many features I could talk about, but we would be here all day. If you're looking for a system that brings more ease, more clarity, and calm into your practice, I truly recommend Jane. You can check it out at jane.app/demo. And because you're part of the AcuPro community, you can use my code AcuPro1MO, 1 month, when you sign up to get a 1-month grace period on your new account. The link and the code are also in the show notes below for you. Now let's get back to today's episode. That's great.
Mhm.
I'm a big proponent and I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. Love his work. And for people that have never heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, his story is remarkable how he went from a broken spine to self-healing. And he teaches a lot. He's been teaching for a long time. He did a whole degree in neurology. He was fascinated by the self-healing. And he talks about that, about you have to rewrite your story because your story in your head is I'm guilty and it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault. And so you have to rewrite that story because otherwise you are not able to, for your body to basically at the cellular level to shift, right? So in order for the cells to change and then eventually they change while you're rewriting your story of who you are. And that's the thing that is tough for most of us because specifically if you've been told so many times or your whole life that you are a certain way, maybe you are too sensitive, maybe you are too loud, or you are whatever it is, that becomes who you are. You're like, oh, this is who I am. I am this person because I've been told so many times. And so when you've been told something, how do you let that go that it is not who you are? Because it probably brings a lot of symptoms, body talk on this that is not really fun to deal with because you've been told since maybe childhood and people were maybe not trying to imprint something in you, but it did. So how do you deal with that?
Oh my gosh, no one's trying to imprint anything, but it's just like we are all working with what we know. Our parents, our grandparents, all of it, everyone's working with what they know. And so therefore, of course, we just get this programming and this imprinting, even television, now social media, all of the things, right? It's everywhere. I was having a session actually a couple of weeks ago with a client that she was navigating just some like people pleasing type behaviors and patterns that were coming up in her workplace. And what I had pulled up was the age of 7, and she had shared, oh yeah, that was a time that it was really reinforced with my siblings that we could not be mean to one another. There was no being mean. And also, everyone else's feelings were the top priority. And I thought, oh, okay. And so she said, well, it was being programmed, and she used those words, that it is inherently bad to hurt someone's feelings. Well, and then we look at, okay, what's the perception though of hurting someone's feelings? Does this mean just speaking up for yourself? Does it mean saying no, setting a standard? What is that perception? And yes, it's all of those things. And so we really look at, again, with the statements, we rewrite that. It's not like we're saying you're going to be a complete jerk either, right? But there's a fine line of here is where I'm still being a kind human, but I'm also being direct and setting my standard and being clear. And so we get to rewrite all of that through the statement portion. I forgive myself for believing that expressing my needs means that I'm going to hurt someone's feelings or that type of thing. And then it's just, again, how we are bringing the unconscious or more subconscious stories into consciousness and then saying, and we don't need to do that anymore, right? So removing that and then reprogramming to the, I give myself permission to stand up for myself. I give myself permission to be kind and clear.
And have boundaries, which is
Mhm.
hard when you are going to put other people's feeling ahead of yours, to have boundaries. So that makes total sense. And I could see the parents going, okay, we have to be kind. It's a positive thing, but the outcome is not quite as black and white. That's a great example. Do you see people where you can feel the trauma is intergenerational?
Yeah, I mean, so part of the sit process is that when we're doing the testing, we pull up a time frame, and sometimes it is generational that comes up, and it's also too in the language, right? So if I'm hearing someone speak about whatever the reason is that they've come to work on, things might fall out of their mouth. Oh, my mom always did this. And so there are little nuggets like that for sure that I can see. And it's just there are cues that their language will give as well that can say, oh, yes, this is being passed down. Absolutely. And then there are other pieces of generational things that they are holding and carrying for XYZ member of the family. And so within SIT, we actually do teach how to do like a surrogate type session and work with that as well.
Pretty cool.
Mhm.
So, what is a surrogate type session? What does that
Yes.
mean?
So basically, as I'm going through and testing the time frame of a session, I may pull up generational, and then I'm going to look at, okay, is it paternal, maternal, and I'll find the person that it is. So let's say it's dad. Then we're going to get into the statement. Well, I'll ask them a little bit about, do you know anything about your dad's life when he was 10 years old? See what they say. They might not. What was happening in your life when you were 10 years old? And then we'll go at it from that perspective. And then I'll have them write the name of the parent on a paper and put it on their chest when we get into statements. So then they're saying the statements from the perspective of that family member.
I don't know if you've ever seen Family Constellation.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot like that, where you're just basically taking that person and then that person is talking, even though it's not the real person, because they could be alive or not, obviously. Okay, that's really cool. Thank you for explaining all this, because it just makes sense. I really appreciate you coming and explaining all this, because I love anything that has to do with mental health, because it affects every single one of us
Mhm.
in a small way, in a medium way, in a big way. It doesn't matter. We can't grade it, but it affects us. So to have more tools, to be able to help and support patients with more tools, to me, that's just so useful, and it's such a good way of looking at it from a different perspective. So my last question for you would be, how do you teach anything that could be coming from somatic work, or to basically looking at the nervous system, to do something or practice for every acupuncturist to prevent, let's say, burnout? Because we have to learn to put boundaries. So when we see so many patients, hopefully their energy, their stories is not imprinting in us. We have to learn to do that. Absolutely. But there's also that burnout that can occur because people overworked and they also have their own life. Even though we teach balance, sometimes we can come out of balance and overwork. I've done it. I've burned out before. I'm a candidate for it. So is there something that you can share, like 1 or 2 tips that would be great for practitioners to listen more and then be ready for not going to the burnout?
Yeah, ultimately, what I would do, I mean, it's not a quick process, but just mapping out your own nervous system. And this is something that, of course, I do, other somatic practitioners do, but just mapping out your system, understanding the cues and the information that your body is communicating to you, and then being able to actually work with it. So another big piece is tracking the moments that you are starting to notice, ooh, I'm about to say yes to this one more thing that I really don't have space for, but I'm going to say yes to it. Just tracking these moments and really noticing when it is becoming out of alignment, right? And then it comes down to choice points of the awareness of what is happening in the body or the choices that you may be about to make. And then the choice point is, oh, I get to actually choose different. So ACE is awareness, choice, expression. And once you have the awareness of something that you're doing, something, a sensation that's coming up in the body, you have the choice to listen to it or to override it, and you get to choose where you go with it, right? And that ultimately can be, am I just going to allow myself to actually just sit with this right now, or am I going to override this, push it down one more time and move ahead? So for me, the answer there is always come into the body, get to know your nervous system and the cues that it's giving you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You teach practitioners the whole program, and I feel like a lot of us could benefit to learn more. Like, I love to learn. So for me, to learn more technique, more tools in my toolbox to be able to help certain patients. Like I said earlier, I may have someone coming for fertility and they have unexplained infertility where everything is perfect, everything looks fantastic, but they're not getting pregnant. So obviously, I'm going to look at what's going on with the emotions, which basically is showing in the body as, nope, we're not doing this, we're not getting pregnant. So looking at from that perspective, having more tools for me would be fantastic. So I know you teach that to practitioners as well, and we'll have the link below in the show notes. But if you wanted to part with us with any last thoughts, please go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I would say, again, just coming into the body, really familiarizing with your own body. And I feel that this can bring us to a place of what I'm working towards is guiding folks to live and to be present to life always and in all ways. And that can also mean in the very challenging moments, I can still be here and be present in it, right? And that comes from coming into the body, being able to sit with emotions, learning how to sit with emotions, and coming from that place of embodiment.
That's awesome. So that's literally, because stress is going to happen to all of us. It's just the way it is. It's like having the tools to be able to manage it while it's happening and just being very aware, very present in order for you to deal with whatever, like you said, the situation, which I feel is so key because it would prevent a lot of violence, a lot of issues, that reactive issues that we could have or anybody could have, because that's just the nature of how people react to stress depending on their autonomic nervous system. So thank you so much for coming, Kristi. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and really showing us other tools and another way of looking at helping and supporting our patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. What a treat.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I truly hope you benefited from this episode, and I would love for you to share it with a friend that may benefit from it as well. Follow the show, leave a review, and if you want more, go to my website, acuproacademy.com. I have tons of resources there with treatment protocols, case studies, free courses, and so much more. And connect with me on all social media at AcuPro Academy. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Pinterest, and LinkedIn and TikTok. And no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM. Please listen to the disclaimer, because the AcuPro Show podcast and material shared through AcuPro Academy, which is a subdivision of Natural Health Sense Incorporated, are designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. The utilization of information from this podcast or any associated material is at the user's discretion and risk. This content is not meant to replace the guidance of an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor, medical doctor, physician, or any qualified professional, nor is it a substitute for proper diagnosis or treatment. Users are strongly advised not to ignore or postpone seeking medical advice for any existing medical condition with their healthcare professional regarding any health concerns.